I, Cassandra Phillips, President of the Duncanville ISD Board of Trustees, call this meeting of the Duncanville Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of Board of Trustees is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. And here at Duncanville ISD, our mission is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. Okay, so we will now move to Board of Trustees Agenda Item A, to administer the oath of office to elected trustees. And now we'll turn the meeting over to Ms. Debbie Prather.
Thank you. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Board of Trustees, place, okay, good, of Duncanville ISD of the state of Texas, and will the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Prather. We will now go into closed session. Okay, we are back from closed session. We will continue with our agenda items. We will now move to board activities. Agenda Item A, reorganization of the board, election of officers. And reorganization of the board is down there, but, okay. We will now take action on the election of officers. The officers are president, vice president, and secretary. Do I have a nomination for president of the board? Huh?
Would I say I move to approve the election of Janice Savage Martin as president of our board for 2021, 2022.
Thank you, Trustee Fahey. Trustee Fahey moved to nominate Janice Savage Martin as president of our board. Is there a second? Janet Veracruz, Trustee Veracruz seconded the motion. Are there any, all those in favor? Y'all see I'm just a mess right now. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Opposed? That motion passed 5-0. Okay, so now this is the time when our new president will take over.
The vice president for this term is Janet Veracruz, and the secretary is Jackie Colton. If your name starts with J, then you're an officer this year. And give me just a minute to get organized.
Are we gonna get to play musical chairs when Jackie and Phil are back with us?
Yes, he said that we could change again if we wanted
Okay.
to.
Not that I mind being here, but
I call this meeting to order. Okay. Coming back from closed session, I call this meeting of the Duncanville Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that the meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. To further discuss items that were discussed in closed session I will turn it over to Ms. Brown to introduce the new Director of Professional Development. But as she's walking up, we need to vote on the officer.
We need to vote on the items that you all approved in closed session.
Which was just today. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
All right, so tonight we are making a recommendation for the Director of Professional Development. Okay.
Yes, sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to extend 1 year? Sorry. Do I have a motion to approve the Director of Professional Development as discussed in closed session?
so moved.
Okay, the motion was made by Carla Fahey and seconded by Cassandra Phillips. Everyone in favor, please raise your hand. 5-0. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. It is my pleasure to introduce you all to Dr. Tamara Liddell. Dr. Liddell is a dedicated, knowledgeable, resourceful, and goal-driven educator who brings over 20 years of experience to her new role as the Director of Professional Development in Duncanville ISD. Her educational experiences span from educational leader to educational facilitator in public, private, charter, and collegiate settings. Most recently, she has served as an elementary principal in Mansfield ISD. She has developed and implemented ideas to promote retention of highly qualified teachers in collaboration with her current district's KEEPS director, where she served as a principal advisor. She has researched grants and facilitated professional development sessions for new teachers at the district level and implemented best practices to recruit and retain exemplary teachers. We believe that these experiences fit perfectly in her new role here in the district. She is committed to the academic success of students, the emotional well-being of teachers, and is also committed to support all staff through the continuous improvement cycle as they engage in meaningful professional development district-wide. It is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Tamara Liddell to the Duncanville ISD family. And so we welcome you at this time, Dr. Liddell. You are welcome. Tonight, Dr. Liddell is also accompanied by her husband and her two daughters, if you all would stand at this time. And I'll now turn it over to Dr. Liddell to give a few words to the board.
Madam President, Dr. Smith, and members of the school board, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in Duncanville ISD. I look forward to working alongside the wonderful leaders here, principals, and serving students, our scholars. So again, thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to getting started and doing the work. Thanks again.
Thank you, and it's good to have you in the district. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to extend 1 year non-certified professional contract to the listed executive district administrator? Motion was made by Cassandra Phillips and seconded by Janet Veracruz. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And opposed. We will now move to opening ceremonies. And Janet Veracruz, will you give the invocation?
Thank you, Madam President. If you would bow your head with me for a moment of prayer. Heavenly Father, we gather together and come into agreement in the wonderful and powerful name of Jesus. Where two or more are gathered, there you will be in the midst of us, and anything we agree upon as touching you will surely do. We know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And we seek your guidance, Lord, and protection as we navigate this meeting and decisions being made tonight for the better of our school leaders, educators, students, and superintendent. Lord, we pray that everything would be executed with excellence and done unto you, Father. Help everyone to filter and focus on the things you know they need to change and improve. Lord, we look to you as our source and provider. Empower each person to stay unified in purpose of thought and heart. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please stand as we do the pledge to the flags. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
We will now move on to the superintendent's report. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Smith.
All right, thank you, Madam President, and board members and those that are in attendance. I have the following items that I would like to report on this evening. The first is just an update and a report on our Inspire District magazine. Board members, you do have one at your place to take with you. As you know, we are focused on marketing the great things that are going on in Duncanville Independent School District. This magazine is one of many ways that we are telling our story and putting our story out there for our public and communities to see. And so we published a digital version of the Inspire magazine a few weeks ago, and printed copies that were delivered to campuses on last week. And then we've targeted certain communities, Duncanville community, obviously, and surrounding communities with many additional copies to the tune of thousands of copies that will go out in mailers all across our area. And this is an opportunity to talk about all the opportunities that exist in Duncanville ISD, from, of course, our academics to the fine arts and to the many activities that exist in our district. So it was a great opportunity to assemble some of our great educators that you see listed there, and for them to be able to tell their story. They each had a lot of pride in their particular programs, and so I'm just excited about getting this out into the community and as well as surrounding communities. As we approach next school year, you know, our goal is to get our students back face-to-face and also attract others who might have an interest in Duncanville ISD. And this is one of the ways that we are doing that, and we're so proud of that. The next item, board, that I have is just to provide you some legislative updates. We have 2 weeks that remain in the 87th legislative session. The session is scheduled to end on May 31st. And so at this time, there are literally hundreds of bills that are still being tossed around back and forth from the House and the Senate. And they'll go through that process continuously over the next 2 weeks. The bills, several bills are now in the conference committees. And in those conference committees, those members are meeting, and they're really working through the differences in those bills. There'll be certain language on the House side, certain language on the Senate side, and they are working together to get one final bill that will move forward to the governor. Now that the legislature has a hard deadline, May 31st, we are likely to see a lot of traction in some of the bills that are just hanging out there. And as a district, we are tracking several of those bills. For the last couple of months, Dr. Bigby has been updating you, for example, on House Bill 3, which is kind of called the cleanup bill from the previous session. And so he'll also be updating you on that this evening, a little bit later in our board meeting. There are a couple of other bills that are really significant to us that we're watching. One is the discussion centered around virtual learning and whether or not that is going to be funded. It looks like we're going to be in a good place there, as on both sides there has been momentum and positive conversation centered around funding, allowing funding for school districts for virtual students. Lots of language still be left to develop and work through, and those details will come out, I would anticipate, sometime over the next couple of weeks. We have an agenda item that is referencing that, and so we're going to move forward as if we're going to have that opportunity. If something changes by the 31st, then we'll make adjustments in our plans. But you know, that's one of the bills, or a second bill that we're really monitoring. Another bill that we are really monitoring deals with critical race theory. There are several legislators who are moving a bill through the committee structure that really addresses that topic. This is important, obviously. The bill basically would prohibit school districts from providing training for teachers on various topics such as ethnicity and race and some history events that have occurred in our country. And so that's something that we as a district need to be mindful of, because right now, as you all know, last school year, or this current school year, I'm sorry, we have done a study on a book study on having critical conversations about race. And so if this bill were to move forward, we would not be able to have those kind of conversations. Also, in our school district, we currently offer an African American Studies course, and we are planning to offer a Mexican American Studies course. Well, if this bill were to move through, according to the current language that we see, we potentially would not be able to offer those courses. There are several districts around us that have a unified effort and voice, if you will, to try to speak against this bill from gaining traction. You may have seen this weekend that Dallas ISD is preparing to take legal action if this does take place. So we're watching this very carefully. It would have a huge impact on us and Duncanville ISD, and so we'll keep you posted on that, and we'll see where that goes. The last bill that I wanted to put on your radar that would be really significant is actually called the Tebow Bill. And that bill would allow homeschool students to participate in UIL activities. And so you can see the potential there that would have all over the state, but in particular in Duncanville ISD. So those are some bills that we're watching. We're still tracking the language very carefully. I will say, just talking to Dr. Bigby, and we're always talking through what's going on up in Austin. And it's just important to note that, not to be partisan in any way, but it is a fact that the Republicans have the numbers. And right now, they are really moving forward in support of these bills. So we'll just have to see how that works as we go through the remaining weeks of the session. But those are the legal updates. We'll continue to monitor that, track that, of course, keep you up to date. And also, there are many sources out there for you to kind of track this as well on a daily basis and see where things are leading. The next item that I have for you is the Collegiate Academy update. We were fortunate to be able to host an event for the first graduating class of our Collegiate Academy. This board has been very committed to college and career readiness, very committed to preparing our students for opportunities when they graduate high school here in Duncanville. And this is one of the signature programs that we really invested in over the years. And so it was great to really acknowledge, recognize, and honor that first graduating class. It's been 4 years since this board allowed us to be able to move in that direction, and those 4 years passed pretty quickly. Those students are now graduating, and they're ready and set to go do great things. And so we just want to thank our board for giving us an opportunity to really make a difference in the lives of students, also to put us in a position to accomplish a goal that we set a few years ago, which is to position students to be Merit Scholar candidates. And we are certainly on track there. We talked about Leslie Taylor, who received the Bill Melinda Gates Scholarship. We were able to recognize her. That is a very competitive scholarship. Only 2% of the students who apply for that actually are able to be considered and ultimately win. And so we have one of those students here in Duncanville ISD. And so thus far, we have 40 scholars that have reported nearly $3 million in scholarships from the Collegiate Academy. And so we're just excited about the work that's going on there, and we're going to continue to build on that program. The next item that I'd like to report, board, is on the Superintendent of Scholars, which is really a partner to our Collegiate Academy, because this is our opportunity to infuse our collegiate efforts through multiple grade levels and to recognize and honor those students who are performing at the intermediate level and our lower levels as they work their way up through high school. There is a rigorous criteria to be a superintendent scholar, and we were able to recognize and reward our students. We started with the lower classification students first, and then we ended the night by recognizing our juniors, mostly juniors and some seniors. In the fourth year, we've been able to continue growing each year. We started this back in 2018 with 63 students. We're up to 100 students now. And it's really been a key part of us creating that college-going culture here in Duncanville ISD. And so we're excited for those scholars, what they're going to be doing moving forward. And we also recognize our administrators who are so critical in making sure that program is successful. The next item I have to update you on is our Inspiring Leadership Academy. Of course, here in Duncanville, we are truly invested in developing our leaders. I do want to acknowledge the work of our two chief of schools, Dr. Nix and Dr. Goodman. They did an outstanding job throughout the course of this year of providing leadership opportunities for both Cohort 1 and Cohort 2. And so we are growing leaders in our district. We've created a pipeline and a pathway to administrative leadership positions in our district through our ILA. We now have several principals and assistant principals who have all been graduates of our Inspiring Leadership Academy. And so it was great to see them graduate and to continue to take that next step in their journey. And we are certainly hoping that that journey will be right here in Duncanville ISD. And then I have just one last item for you this evening, and it's the Read Across the Ville opportunity that we provided. This was a great event for our school district, and the whole purpose was to promote reading and literacy. And so it was fun to do, number one, and it was great to see Christy Mullins and Ashley Evans and several other members that worked with them but Christy Mullins and Ashley Evans, they did an outstanding job of really leading that effort. We received lots of news coverage prior to that event. You may remember, we made several evening news reports on that, on our event. And we were able to have a book giveaway for students, and we promoted the live event well up to it, and it worked. We had more than 600 individuals log on live. And so it was a great evening. And we had very active chatting going back and forth. We had more than 700 individuals chat with us, asking questions, sending in comments during the actual event. And so it was a great opportunity for us to promote our program, to have leaders be front and center, and using our YouTube live video. And so we also were able to include lots of local authors too. So those are the items that I have to report on, Madam President, and I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
One thing I noticed, the booklet there, I Am Brilliant, was written by our very own Dr. Ivory. Very good. We will now move to recognitions. I will turn the meeting over to Tiara Richard.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. One of the first items I wanted to bring up was our donations that we received from the district. Anytime someone personally or through an organization is willing to give money and donate and give to our school district, we want to make sure we take the time to thank them for their efforts. And so we had 2 donations this month that we wanted to make sure we recognize. The first one is from Delta Kappa Gamma Society, the Delta Tall chapter. They donated $2,500 for the purchase of classroom libraries at Smith Elementary School. And so we wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. And Smith is waiting, obviously after this process has been approved by the board, they will go out and start purchasing those classroom libraries to put throughout the school. So they're really excited and really looking forward to that. And again, appreciative of Delta Kappa Gamma Society. And just as an FYI, that is a women's education sorority. So these are educators giving back to education. So I wanted to share that. And then our second donation was for $500 from Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, the Southwest Dallas Alumni Chapter. They donated that $500 towards clothing items for the Panther Pantry. And so, as you've known, our social workers and counselors here in the district have been growing that Panther Pantry for quite some time. And anytime they get those donations, they really give directly back to our students and our families. And in addition to clothes, they also do food. They do items, baby items for families, for students or families who have young children. And so our Panther Pantry is one of those resources. And so we wanted to thank this organization also. All right. And so I have the next item up. I want to go ahead and continue on into our recognitions. So for recognitions this month, we have a couple of really great honorees we're excited to bring forward to you. The first are our District Teachers of the Year. Thank you, ladies. So this year, we surprised our District Teachers of the Year one day before the virtual employee appreciation event. And so Dr. Smith, Dr. Nix, the Chief of Schools, and Ms. Kathleen Brown went to these campuses and surprised these teachers, and they were completely caught off guard. But they were super excited. Their principals held the secret. I was really impressed that they could hold that for as long as they did. And then we had to ask these women to actually hold that secret one more day, so we didn't announce it until the virtual employee appreciation event the following day. But they did a fabulous job, and these are some leaders who we're excited to continue to work with this year. So I wanted to start first up, we have our District Teacher of the Year for elementary, Miss Jessica Ford of Brandenburg Elementary School. Ms. Ford is a 5th grade reading teacher. She is a mentor, a leader, an outstanding teacher. She does an excellent job providing academic as well as social and emotional growth for her students. She just cares and shows them she cares every opportunity she gets. And then on our secondary District Teacher of the Year, we have Ms. Ika Johnson of Kennemer Middle School.
Ms. Johnson is a teacher at Kennemer, as I said, but she's also in the STEAM Academy. She has more than 20 years of total teaching experience, most of that here in Duncanville. She inspires students and encourages them to reach their dreams and goals, and just believes in nurturing that hands-on opportunity for young students. These two teachers were selected by their peers first at the campus level, and then working with Ms. Brown in the Human Resources Department and other leaders, they went through an interview process. And during that interview process, these two really, really shined. And so now they're going to continue and represent the district at the regional level, and then have the opportunity, when they do really well there, to go on to the state. So this is a process that continues. And as you know, our District Teachers of the Year, they don't just win an award and stop working. They actually continue to give back in the district. Dr. Smith puts a lot of time in with them to make sure that they represent the district at various public meetings and events. And so these two will represent us throughout the next school year continuously. And so we're really honored and grateful and thankful for you two for just stepping up and being such phenomenal leaders. Thank you both so much. All right, and next up, we have someone from our Transportation Department who's here to join us this evening. So I'd like to welcome up Ms. Felicia Witcher. There you go. Hello, Ms. Witcher. How are you doing today? Wonderful. So Ms. Witcher is our Bus Driver of the Year. So we know transportation, just like everyone, has quite the school year. So like so many others, their staff has had to be nimble, flexible, willing to just move and make adjustments quickly. On any day, their scheduling could change. They're changing who's driving or riding the bus and who's not. On testing days, they have new schedules they're having to put out. So this is just a constant moving target for them. But Ms. Witcher is one of those people who she thrives under that flexibility, thrives under making sure that students are taken care of. Her dedication and her dedication specifically to student safety is one of those things that made her stand out as a reason she was selected as Bus Driver of the Year. This honor is actually chosen through Property Casual Alliance of Texas, which is one of our insurance providers. Ms. Witcher just displays the qualities that help make transportation run smoothly and safely for everyone. And so we want to congratulate you, Ms. Witcher, and thank you so much for all that you do here in Duncanville ISD. Congratulations as our Bus Driver of the Year. And that concludes our recognitions for the evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Richard. We will now move to communication from citizens to discuss pending agenda items before the board. And do we have any? Do not. We do not have any. We do not have any communications from the citizens regarding a pending agenda item. We will now move to take action on items discussed in closed session. We already did that. We will now move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda? I will now accept a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions, discussions, or comments? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We will now move to the action agenda items. A, Acton Leadership Academy District Mascot and Delegation of Purchasing Authority for School Action Funds, purchases exceeding $50,000. And Dr. Hvac.
Good evening, Madam President, trustees, and Dr. Smith. This evening, I'm here to follow up on last month's discussion regarding transitioning to the universal mascot of Panthers and to discuss our purchasing needs for implementing the Acton Leadership Academy. Just to recap briefly, as part of our planning for the Acton Leadership Academy, the discussion of the mascot came about, which generated a larger conversation about mascots district-wide. Currently, all of our secondary schools utilize the district mascot of Panthers, as well as one of our elementary campuses, Fair Meadows Elementary. However, our intermediate and all other elementary schools have unique mascots that were selected either during the building design or redesign phase of the campus. At our last board meeting, you requested that we gather some feedback from stakeholders and to consider some cost assumptions. Stakeholder feedback was collected through a random sample survey that was sent to campus administrators, campus site-based committees, and the Duncanville ISD Foundation. Through this survey, we got 108 respondents, with 84% being employees and 16% being parents, alumni, and community members. Based on the data collected from this random sample, we had 61% that fully supported transitioning to the universal mascot of Panthers, and 79% stated that they would like to transition all campuses next year. Originally, we recommended a more gradual transition, but that does not appear to be the preference of the stakeholders. We also asked what would be the most positive impact of everyone being Panthers, and 76% identified unity and oneness as the most positive, followed by budgetary savings. In addition to collecting stakeholder feedback, we also considered the budgetary impact of this change. We evaluated the impact by surveying our campus principals, conducting facility walkthroughs, gathering cost estimates, and reviewing past purchases. Based on our analysis, the budgetary impact is minimal. We would have to replace several marquees at the elementary schools and some window wraps like the one seen here at Hyman. Then on a smaller scale, we have a few campuses with some wall paintings and mascot rugs at the entrance that would need to be addressed over time. Last month, we recommended a more gradual approach, as I said, to moving to the universal mascot of Panthers. However, we're open to a more expedited approach based on stakeholder feedback, but no matter what the determined timeline is, our execution strategy will include a communication plan for each campus, age-appropriate, age-aligned graphics, and a discussion of this transition with each campus planning committee. Before I continue to the purchasing discussion, are there any questions regarding the mascots? Okay, so we'll keep
I just
going.
have a comment. I want to thank you for getting all that data. That really helps me make a decision. Thank you.
You are welcome. Happy to. Okay, so we'll move on. I would like to now share with your request regarding the purchases through the School Action Fund grant for the Acton Leadership Academy. Due to COVID, our planning for the Leadership Academy has taken a little bit longer, which has pushed us up against the grant timeline of June 30th. Since this is a planning grant, the purchases are intended to be used to set up the campus for implementing a bold action, which for us is the Leadership Academy. Therefore, we're planning to utilize the funds to create a leadership environment at Acton Elementary and lay the foundation at other grant campuses of Alexander and Hastings. Our primary expenditures will be on Leader in Me coaching and training, which is approximately $84,000, as well as Leader in Me resources such as student and teacher books, puppet sets, etc., which will be about $27,000. We will also be paying all teachers through the grant and paraprofessionals and support staff for participating in the training. Our supplemental expenditures will focus on creating the Leader in Me culture through collaborative spaces, house systems, and facility modifications. We do know that in addition to the Leader in Me contract, the furniture purchases will most likely exceed the $50,000 threshold, which requires board approval. Therefore, we would like to request that the board delegate the authority to Dr. Smith until the end of the grant period, again, which is June 30th, to approve purchases under the school action grant that may exceed $50,000. Due to the grant requirements, we are bound to adhere to the federal purchasing guidelines, which ensures our district is maintaining fiscal responsibility. And we have to get through Dr. Bigby. That makes it extra secure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share about our progress in planning for the new Leadership Academy at Acton Elementary and the work we're doing to lay a foundation of unity and excellence at all campuses. We have 2 recommendations this evening. We recommend the board approve the transition to the mascot of Panthers at the campuses as determined by the board. And we recommend the board authorize the delegation of authority to the superintendent to approve purchases exceeding $50,000 through the end of the grant period for items associated with the School Action Fund grant dollars. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Anyone have questions? Yes, Carla?
I recently saw Alexander's marquee. It looks fairly new. It looks to be LED or the twinkly lights. How much did that cost? Who paid for it? And how much will the new one cost? And will it be sparkly and pretty?
Yes, I'm actually going to turn it over to Mrs. Fields because she's done quite a bit of research on all the lighted different signs that they have and what has to actually specifically be replaced. The whole sign does not have to be replaced. It's just the
Just some
panels.
bulbs? Okay, little.
The panels where the words are, and so that does make it less expensive, which is helpful.
I think it's an eagle. There's, yeah.
It is an eagle, yes, and they also have some window wraps over at Alexander, so.
Good evening. Yes, ma'am. That marquee, the total sign, the marquee with the digital sign, was paid for by the campus. They had been saving their money. It did not come through the maintenance department. Approximately $15,000.
$15,000?
Yes, for the digital sign, and the ones that are the larger ones, of course, now are a lot more costly. And so we've already gotten some quotes on what it would take to replace the panels. Even at Acton, we've already received those. And so the one, I believe, at Acton is approximately $6,000, about $6,500. But the others are a lot less depending on the size of the panel that we'll have to replace.
So other campuses, will the marquees be replaced with like marquees? I mean, if it's just the plain kind with the stick-on letters, is that what it will be replaced with, or do we have plans for a uniform marquee system throughout the district?
Right now, we don't have the plan for uniform marquees. Many of, believe the one even at Fair Meadows, the campus purchased that on their own. They saved their money and were able to do that. But there's always the possibilities of going uniform because, of course, now we're all changed to Panthers. Mr. Paterka did walk those campuses and took photos so that we could really get accurate quotes to replace the panel. So maybe a plan in the working today.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I believe the panels were around 1,100 each campus to change those out.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? I think we need to take this in 2 motions because we've got to decide and have a motion to do what they recommend in the handout or display for Brandenburg, Daniel, Hardin, and Acton for 21-22, or as the other indication was that everybody's for it, for everybody, for every school. So y'all can decide how you want to make the motion. You can make a motion.
There are two suggested motions on page 68.
68. Right, but she says named campuses. We have to decide if we want to do the recommended 4 campuses for this next school year and do it in a 3-year period, or as the slideshow presented, the people that were, asked to vote and see how they feel, said all campuses should be.
Madam President, I
Yes.
move that the board approve the recommendation to transition to the mascot of Panthers for all campuses.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion on that? The recommendation is for all campuses at once. Okay. All those in favor of transitioning all campuses, intermediate and elementaries, to Panthers, raise your right hand. All those not in favor? The motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Now for the second. Is there a motion to delegate a purchasing authority for school and action funds purchases exceeding $50,000 to Dr. Smith?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Cassandra Phillips and seconded by Janet Vera Cruz. Any questions, comments, discussions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Any opposed? No. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just, Madam President, I will definitely be keeping the board up to date on all those expenditures, just to keep you all up to date.
Okay. We'll now move to action item B, approval of RFP 2021, all-inclusive printing service. The presenter is Andrea Fields.
And good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith and waiting audience. Tonight, I present for your approval a request for proposal for all-inclusive printing for the district. In your board book, and I believe the item starts on page 79 of the board book and ends on page 109, since I have about 30 pages, so I wanted to make sure that you were with me. The district solicited RFP responses from over 70 of our current vendors. And these were 70 vendors that have provided printing services for us over the last 3 years. These vendors received a direct mailing from our purchasing department with a deadline to submit by April 21st at 2:00 p.m. Of the 70, and we did send them a direct mailing because we just didn't advertise on our website, but we also mailed them a letter. Of the 70, 15 vendors responded to us, with one that did not submit all the required paperwork. And if you look on page 100, it's highlighted there in yellow, I believe, in your board book. It's on page 100 of the bid tab packet. An RFP for all-inclusive printing is for multiple facets of printing, which could include anything from caps, T-shirts, ink pens, labels, business cards, banners, window and door wraps, note cards, cue folders, and the list can go on and on. In other words, it's anything that you can print on or place our logo on was included in this proposal. As you review the bid tabs, you can see that some vendors submitted proposals for a specific type of printing, as none of them really specialize in every type of printing. In the past, we've had our printing contract tied to another district's RFP, But by approving this tonight, Duncanville will have its own RFP. Our current contract ends on June 30th of this really next month. If approved, the proposed contract would be effective through June 30th of 2022, with a possible renewal of 4 additional one-year periods. Included in the bid tabs are some of our local vendors, as you may have noticed, such as Performer A to Z, Southwest Printing, Fast Signs, and Dallas ISD's graphic department. But with the additions of others, this will increase our options and purchasing power for our campuses and districts. Also, when our campuses and districts request a quote for a print job, many are time sensitive, and with having multiple vendors, this will allow us to having more available time options as well to get a job completed. So it is the recommendation of the administration that all the vendors listed who complied with the RFP for all-inclusive printing for Duncanville ISD be approved, and I will be happy to entertain any questions you may have for me.
Are there any questions? I do have one. What is the difference between a blank space and an X? What does that mean? They're not submitting for that category?
Exactly.
X means if we don't do it, don't
right,
call
they
us.
don't, and that's why I said none of these can do everything, but they all can do something. And so with the X, they didn't supply us a bill, a bid, et cetera. So, yes, ma'am. Any other
Okay.
questions?
Any other questions? Do I have a motion in regards to the approval of RFP 2021 All-Inclusive Printing Service?
So
So
moved.
I'll second.
Carla Fahey made the motion, seconded by Cassandra Phillips. Any more questions, discussions? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you so much.
We will now move to action item C, purchase of Avtech Scout Dispatch Communications Platform. The presenter is Chief Hampton.
Good evening, Madam President, Dr. Smith, and the Board of Trustees. I come before you tonight with 2 separate items. The first one will be the purchase of 2 P25 compliant dispatch communications, and the second one will be the City of Dallas interlocal agreement. The Dallas existing communication system is at its end of life, so they are purchasing a new P25 compliant voice radio communication system. The interlocal agreement that I'll speak to next is an agreement for Duncanville ISD to partner with Dallas and subscribe to utilize their new P25 communication system. Although these 2 items are separate, in order to maximize their capabilities and to function better as one unit. You will hear me use the phrase P25 throughout this presentation. That's just a short name for Project 25. Project 25 is nothing more than a project where multiple law enforcement entities collaborated to develop a unified first responder dispatch radio communication system to be utilized worldwide. This Avtech dispatch communication systems were created to summon emergency help from first responders. Dispatchers' responsibility is to gather critical information from the caller, their names, the call locations, as well as basic details of what's going on, and broadcast that to the responding unit. Today, dispatch communication systems such as Avtech's are no longer just for emergency calls. They are also used for accessing information from shared databases such as Texas Department of Public Safety, our federal law enforcement partners as FBI and Interpol, and many others. This new technology has become a game changer for the dispatchers, but it adds values to the first responders. Having access to this level of confidential information and sharing it with first responders is real-time, is key, and it builds trust and relationship between dispatchers and first responders. Avtech will allow us to integrate our existing security equipment such as our portable radios, our phone systems, our access control, our cameras, our alarms, and many other security components that we have, and it is P25 compatible. I have the PowerPoint up there just to kind of show the difference between Avtech, what we're trying to get, and CIT Pro is what we actually currently have. So Avtech is comparable to the PlayStation in my eyes. It streamlines communications to our dispatchers to ensure a more effective and efficient line of communication with our first responders, which yields a better opportunity for problem solving and a better response time to calls for service. Our Avtech is flexible, it's reliable, customizable, and has interoperability capabilities as well as the ability to grow with our agency, which if purchased would be a return on our investment. A dependable, clear, precise communication is critical in law enforcement. It saves lives. Our current system, which is the CTI Pro, which I say equals the Atari, it's for radio talk only. It has no data capabilities. It limits who you can talk to. It only has 4 channels, and it is not P25 compatible. So we reached out to our current vendor, Megahertz, and they provided a quote for $57,528 to purchase the 2 consoles, which exceed the $50,000. So we are seeking your approval to purchase this system by utilizing the grant funding from our school violence program prevention that we received a couple of years ago from the government. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
I see none. Thank you. This motion is to give the approval for the megahertz technology to complete the scope of work for purchase, installation, and training of the Avtech Scout Dispatch Communications Platform consoles. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion was made by Cassandra.
Second.
Carla, second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move into action item D, interlocal agreement with the City of Dallas for police services. And the presenter again is Chief Hampton.
Okay. The next item I bring before you is the City of Dallas P25 compliant voice radio communication system in a local agreement. This radio system has been around since 2012, but only here in the DFW Metroplex for approximately 5 or 6 years. It meets state and federal FCC requirements and is capable of countywide coverage for both public safety and public work groups throughout Dallas County. The P25 radio digital system is compatible with Avtech and the countywide interoperability capabilities. You all have heard me talk before about interoperability, which is nothing more than the ability for emergency response agencies to talk to one another via communication systems to exchange voice and data with one another on demand, in real time, when needed, and as authorized. As an agency, our first priority must be to provide emergency responders with functioning, agent-specific, mission-critical communication systems. As jurisdictions build new systems, such as Dallas, or upgrade existing ones, such as Duncanville ISD, another priority is the provision of reliable and interoperability communications across disciplines, jurisdictions, and levels of government. Next slide. There was another slide that I had that talks about the smart TV. It's what I would like to refer to, show a visual of when talking about the interlocal agreement. You all know that there's a Roku TV. The Roku stick in the smart TV allows you to expand your capabilities and subscribe and stream other movies and TV shows such as Netflix, Amazon Prime Videos, Hulu. And you can do this without connecting separate streaming devices such as Blu-ray players, DVD players, and for those that remember, the VCRs and many others. The Roku expands the smart TV capabilities. This Dallas interlocal agreement is like a Roku stick that I refer to. It expands the P25 capabilities and abilities to Duncanville ISD. It allows us to talk to many other agencies within Dallas County that are dealing with the same issues or that may come to our jurisdictions to help us and assist us with problems that we may be dealing with. And you may ask, well, Chief, why do you need this? Why do you all need this? For example, if you all remember right before COVID, we had a call at the high school that we thought could have possibly been an active shooter. It turned out to be fireworks. If you all recall that there was multiple law enforcement agencies that responded to the campus and was outside of the campus. Only Duncanville ISD and Duncanville PD were the officers that were inside. If you all recall, as we talked about that incident, there was an issue with communication. We were not able to talk to the units outside, and the officers outside were not able to communicate with us inside. So of course, that caused a delay for us to have a plan of action on how we were going to address the situation inside of the school. The quick solution to that fix was that we purchased a portable radio for Duncanville PD so that we could communicate with Duncanville PD, and Duncanville PD be that conduit between us and the other law enforcement agency to have that line of communications open. So another situation that I'll talk about is going to be a lockdown that occurred at Fair Meadows. So there was a Grand Prairie unit pursuing a DWI eastbound on 20 and stopped in an unknown location on 20. Due to the unknown location on 20, Fair Meadows received the information that this was occurring, and they put the school into lockdown, which was the right choice. Once we found that information out, I was contacted. I contacted my dispatcher and had them to contact Grand Prairie Dispatch so that we could indeed find out the updated information as far as to where the stop exactly occurred. The information that we received, the stop occurred in over in DeSoto at 35 and 20. At this particular time, Fair Meadows was contacted and told to release the lockdown. So with this P25 system, we would have been able to pull out our radios, turn to the Grand Prairie channel, and get that update immediately. So I think that this system will benefit us here in Duncanville ISD to get the information that we need in a timely manner. So there are other departments that are also going through the same process that I am tonight, and they include Duncanville PD, Cedar Hill PD, Cedar Hill ISD PD, Lancaster, and many more within Dallas County are considering and going to this process. The budgetary piece is anticipated to be approximately $500 annually, which is based on the number of equipment pieces, which is radios and consoles that we would have here at Duncanville ISD, connected to the countywide system. This fee will be managed within the annual police budget, and I'm seeking your approval tonight to enter into this partnership to subscribe with the City of Dallas for this countywide project. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any comments, questions? I do have a comment. Your visuals were very good and clear, and your experiences were very clear.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion in regards to the interlocal agreement with the City of Dallas for police services?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. The motion was made by Cassandra Phillips and seconded by Janet Veracruz. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We will now move to action item E, consider approval of marketing purchases. The presenter is Tiara Richard.
Good evening once again, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. I come before you today to speak about marketing purchases that will accumulate to be over $50,000. As we know, marketing is key to increasing, in particular, student enrollment, and that's an area that we have an extreme emphasis on as we proceed into the new school year. You've probably heard me say it before that there are just many forms of marketing, and you apply the best strategy based on what you're hoping to achieve. For enrollment, we utilize a variety of efforts to reach families in our community, those passing through and those in the surrounding communities. One method we've had great success with in recent years has been utilizing some media buys through radio, paid social media advertising, and direct mails or door-to-door, which you heard Dr. Smith mention today. Although the communications team primarily does quite a bit of the creative side of those creations for the marketing, so we're talking about the design work, we'll frequently do that part of it. But there are firms that have relationships with some of these companies that we do those media buys through that allows them to make those purchases for less money. And also just in a faster fashion. There were times where I was trying to reach radio stations and I would call the different stations week after week, and these firms would get them immediately and get great deals as a result of that. And so those relationships do matter. So the purchase, one of those firms that we've used consistently is called Brandera. And we've developed a really strong relationship with them. The purchase before you today is for radio advertising and paid social media advertising for pre-K marketing. That actual advertising purchase is not higher than $50,000, but it will be cumulatively higher than $50,000 with a prior purchase we made through Brandera already this year. That prior purchase was actually the door-to-door mailer Dr. Smith mentioned earlier, the one that you have a copy of. So that purchase through them, again, we created it, designed it, they printed it, and then mailed it door to door. And so that purchase right there, combined with this additional purchase that's before you right now, will cumulatively be more than $50,000. So as a board, you've previously stated there's a benefit to putting dollars to items that will increase student enrollment and provide or maintain funding for our school district. So as we continue to think outside the box and enhance our marketing for enrollment efforts, I expect we'll have additional marketing purchases similar to this with this vendor and others that we'll bring forward. And so today I'm asking the board to approve the purchase of services for Brandera that are before you, and also approve the superintendent to make ongoing marketing purchases for services and goods through this firm that may exceed $50,000 through August of 2021. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Janet?
Yes, thank you. I see here that on page 133, it says radio script or spot. Is that provided by us, the script? on
We've
how-
actually already written the script, and actually you would hear Laurie's voice, we record it. So that's a part that we are not charged for. We do the work on our end so that we basically cut our costs on the front end. And then we're basically going to them only for the purchase of the advertising space, the airtime.
I didn't see anything for it being translated in bilingual. Will there be a chance for that?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually already recorded in English and Spanish. We use one of our family and community liaisons to actually do the Spanish translation. And so we have it in English and Spanish, and we'll use both of those markets, English and Spanish markets, for that.
And when you say marketing that, would it be going towards like stations towards Univision or and the mark geared towards that audience?
So for these two radio purchases, one of them is with 97.9,
Yes.
which is the urban market, and then the other one is with a Spanish-speaking local station.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So we will make sure that we target both of those audiences, and specifically for this radio commercial for pre-K.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lasagna?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we, almost every place you go now, you get to select if you want to receive communication through text, email, or by paper mail? Is there a way for parents to do that when we enroll or orientation or, and I'm asking because just being at schools, I know how much return mail we get and how much money we spend on postage. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can include that for them to pick their communication preference or preferences, and maybe that would help.
There is an option there for Skyward to do so, but I will say that these door-to-door mailers are not quite the same as those return mailers that you're speaking of, where they're direct. Door-to-door mailers means they hit every door, so we don't get return mail on this mail that we're talking about. Whenever we pay for this mail service, we're paying for it to hit every door, so it does not get that return mail process whenever it's usually a targeted mail directed to specific addresses.
Got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But we do have an option in Skyward for parents to be able to choose how they would like to receive their information. That is
Okay.
built into Skyward.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion to consider approval of marketing purchases?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Carla Fahey and seconded by Cassandra Phillips. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
We'll now move to action item Duncanville Duncanville Choice Virtual Instruction Program. The presenter is Dr. Smith.
Good evening, Madam
I
President.
understand.
Yes, I'm working through my little mask earring conundrum here. Thank you, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Dr. Smith. This evening, I'm here for your consideration and approval for Duncanville ISD to offer a choice program option at Duncanville High School. The Virtual Instruction Program, or also called VIP, is what we are seeking for consideration. The purpose and mission are displayed here on this slide, and they highlight that choice programs offer flexibility and options for our scholars. In this scenario, the proposed program would maintain rigor, relevance, and real-world connections in a virtual learning environment. Next slide. So as you can see above, the Texas legislature is still in session. Dr. Smith referenced that earlier. They are deliberating on types and methods to support virtual learning designs for school districts for the 21-22 school year. No final decisions have been made at this time. Thus, designs for our choice virtual program would be subject to modification. To review our initial planning stages, our list is here on this slide. You can see we have applied for the TEA Virtual School Accelerator Program, which is a grant that would provide technical assistance to approved school districts across the state for teacher training and best practices to engage our students both academically as well as socially and emotionally in a remote learning environment. Last week, Dr. Smith, Ms. Fields, Ms. Payne, and I were interviewed by the TEA grantee official as part of this application. We're anticipating that we should know an answer from TEA sometime in the next couple of weeks. You can also see from the list that we've been working with the Duncanville High School leadership team to finalize student eligibility criteria, to distribute interest surveys to our students and parents, and to designate our program leaders, such as an administrator and a counselor. Just as a special note, those staff would already be assigned to Duncanville High School. It would not incur hiring new administrative staff for this program. The core content curriculum will follow our district-developed content curriculum guides, which include resources from the TEACS resource system, state-adopted materials, aligned instructional materials that do line up with student expectations and the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. Elective courses will also follow the TEACS, and we are looking at and reviewing curriculum resources provided by Texas Home Learning 2.0. Next slide. For the upcoming school year, you can see the two designs that we have circled in yellow. Those describe our program elements. Students would be served in a virtual learning environment with access to curricular activities in the after-school setting. Moreover, the teaching and instructional delivery will be virtual only, not a combination of online and in-person. When we discussed with teachers throughout this year in the pandemic, they did express to us that trying to teach both virtually and in person at the same time was a challenge, and so we wanted to listen and take their feedback and input when we designed this, because they're the most important people that deliver instruction to our students. Also, we want to honor their input, and we want to make that a component of this program. Okay, our next slide. So our key points. Our key points here show that we have rising 11th and 12th graders that will be successful already in our virtual learning environment. They will have demonstrated passing grades, and they will be college and graduation ready as determined by their endorsement pathways and their success throughout the pandemic in remote learning. As you can see again, students will attend school remotely for 100% of their school day. And then we will also honor, as I discussed discussed a moment ago, split scheduling. So some teachers may teach virtual sections. They would be virtual only. And if the master schedule requires, they may have a few in-person sections, but again, those will be deliberated and determined by the campus principal and the administrative team. Okay, our next slide. These charts here illustrate the preference of our currently enrolled students. And still, as you can see, about half of them are selecting and interested in remote learning. So as students are successful in our virtual classrooms, we are considering this option because of the data that we have here before you, and that this is a choice that we would like to have considered for our juniors and seniors, again, who would meet eligibility qualifications and who've demonstrated passing grades this past year. Next slide. So you may wonder, who's eligible? Well, not all students have been able to succeed at high levels during the pandemic and in the virtual classroom. So this design will be limited to those students who have passing grades, as well as who are meeting college and career readiness standards. Students who are enrolled in other choice programs, such as collegiate, PTAC, or T-STEM, really will not be recommended, as much of their specific coursework is really coordinated through strict adherence to Dallas College standards. And we want to be sure that we honor those college standards and that those students would be best served in those choice programs. However, we are exploring currently in our comprehensive dual credit program some courses that may be aligned with virtual instruction, such as professional communication, government and economics, and U.S. history. Okay, our next slide. And so here you can see our timeline. We've got a very involved timeline with lots of milestones and deadlines. And as you can see by the red deadline, there is a May 17th date, which is the date we are experiencing right now, seeking consideration and board approval. This slide does outline various milestone events, administrative tasks, and other things that we are considering, and the dates for those deliverables. As a reminder also, again, the Texas legislature has not approved virtual learning modalities for the 21-22 school year for funding. And so the design and implementation of the Duncanville Choice VIP program would be subject to change depending upon, Texas legislatures and the decisions that they make and approve. I do want to say that I appreciate Mr. McDonald and the Duncanville High School team for their involvement and their initiative. And at this time, I'd also like to recognize Ms. Shalante Payne. She's here with us this evening. She and her team have been very instrumental in putting together the eligibility criteria, the virtual grant application, and all of the things that we have covered this evening. Next slide. So at this time, I would like to make a recommendation and seek your approval for the Duncanville Choice Virtual Instruction Program for Duncanville High School for the 21-22 school year.
Do you have a question, LaSonia?
I have a question. For eligibility requirements, it says TSI college readiness standards met or completion of Texas Bridge in summer. Is there any particular reason why we're making those equal?
Some students may have already met those standards as rising juniors and seniors, so that would already be eligibility checked off for them. A lot of students are already taken the TSI. For students who have not had that opportunity because we've been in the pandemic, or they've been moderately successful but not reached those standards, we want to allow for that flexibility for them to continue to prepare and be successful on TSI. And so those students would be recommended for the Bridge program to accelerate their college and career readiness for the program.
So if a rising junior is accepted into the VIP and they have not passed TSI, they're going to go the entire junior year and take TSI? Or how does their completion of TSI or passing TSI keep them in the program, or is it a requirement for the rising juniors? Does that make sense?
It does. I want to make sure I'm answering your question appropriately. Some rising juniors have met TSI criteria. Some will not have met that criteria. And so for those students who have an interest in the VIP program, we're going to require them to attend the summer bridge in order for them to accelerate their ability to be TSI ready. If they do not meet those expectations or standards in the summer, we'll continue to work with them. But we want to look at those students, as on a case-by-case basis.
So the summer bridge is TSI prep
Yes, ma'am.
specific?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I have another question. Students experiencing success, I didn't really know what that was, or thriving. Is there an attendance percentage that we're looking for?
No, ma'am, we just want them to meet the attendance requirements, obviously the 90% compulsory attendance requirements, as well as having passing grades.
And the STAR status, the end of course status, is that meets or?
We are looking at the criteria to be at meets or masters.
Okay.
Again, we may have some unique individuals that we would look at on a case-by-case basis. We'll leave that to the determination of the administrative team at the high school. However, some of our students who are rising seniors didn't have the same EOC requirements historically because of the pandemic, and that's the same with our rising juniors. Again, our rising juniors will not have taken U.S. history yet, and so as appropriate and as they've had the EOC requirement, we're looking at that to be met at the meets or the master's standard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any, yes, Janet?
So, thank you very much for this report here. I have a question regarding keeping an eye on the status on the grades. So who would be in charge of overseeing that they're, staying above water and staying within the eligibility of the program?
Yes, so in terms of grades, our teachers, our campus administrators, our counselors, they all have systems in place where they monitor grades at the progress report and then the nine-week grading period. So those would apply to the students in the virtual program as well.
Because them applying to this program means that they basically understand the protocol.
Yes, ma'am.
They're self-starters. They know how to get the ball going without an instructor in front of them. They know how to get on the ball and keep up with their status.
Yes, they would have shown passing grades during the virtual learning environment this year. And so that evidence of passing grades, proper attendance, meeting those compulsory attendance rules and laws that I mentioned before with Dr. Ivory, all those things would be taken into consideration. And then they would monitor just like we monitor in the regular school environment
Right.
every 4 and 9 weeks.
Right. And the last, I have a comment regarding the survey. I think that's great because there's several types of students. And
Yes,
some
ma'am.
took to virtual and had no problem. So I think this is going to be great for those type of student learners.
Thank you for that. We have launched the survey, and so we'll be looking forward to getting some good data on that.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Okay, do I have a motion in regards to the Duncanville Choice Virtual Instruction Program, VIP, for qualified juniors and seniors at Duncanville High School?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Cassandra Phillips and seconded by Carla Fahey. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We now move to action item G, College Board exam fees exceeding $50,000. And again, Dr. Sewell.
Yes, Madam President, Board of Trustees, thank you again for your attention, and Dr. Smith. To increase our advanced placement student academic achievement in partnership with the National Math and Science Initiative, we have increased the number of our advanced placement courses and our advanced placement exams for the 2021 school year. And so with increased participation comes increased course fees and exam fees. So at this time this evening, we are anticipating that we will exceed the $50,000 amount for our AP course exam fees. So we're asking for prior approval before the invoice is submitted in June for us to be able to pay this bill to College Board with the fees exceeding $50,000.
Yes, go ahead, LaSonia.
I have a question. When you mentioned the increased participation, is that just enrollment in more classes, or do we also have an increase in the number of students who now take the AP test?
We have, so what I have before me here is in 2020, we actually had 698 AP students that were enrolled, and they enrolled in 1,077 exams. And of those 698 students, 210 scored a 3 or above last year in the pandemic. And so this year, we have 1,272 students who are enrolled in one or more AP exam. And so the anticipated cost is about $68,000, and we're seeking approval for that. So those numbers are what we have currently now and then what we had in 2020.
Okay, so are we seeing an increase in the percentage of students that are taking the AP test?
Yes, we are. We are seeing between, in 2016, we had 277 students that took 434 exams. And then again in 2020, we increased up to 698 students who took 1,077 exams. So in that amount of years, we've gone up from 400 approximately to 1,000.
But some of those students take multiple AP tests.
They
So I was
do.
just trying to disaggregate that, but you can answer that later. I was just wondering, is the number of students increasing?
Yes, the number of students enrolling in AP is increasing, the number of exam participants is increasing, and then the number of successful scores has gone up from 94 to 119 to 129 to 210. And so we're anticipating this year, the more that test, the more that prep, the more that experience that rich AP environment, we're anticipating to have better scores even this year as well. And I can provide this in a data report for Dr. Smith to give to the board.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, Carla.
Is there an exam fee for each AP test?
Yes, ma'am. There is a College Board fee. I don't have that exact number in front of me. It's approximately $70-something around that ballpark, but I don't have the exact number. And then what happens for students who qualify for a free and reduced lunch, the Texas Education Agency waives a portion or all of those fees for those students who qualify. And so they have that data at TEA, then they waive those fees, and then we get the final bill from College Board in June with all the students who decide to test, who go through and test, who qualify for reduced fees, and then we get that bill. And then our partnership with the National Math and Science Initiative allows that organization to reimburse us for those exams in the math and science AP exams that were taken. So any remaining costs that weren't reduced by the state, they have partnered with us to help advance our students and to waive those fees for us as well. So that's exciting.
Lots of record keeping.
Yes, ma'am. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
You
all right.
did.
Okay, do
Anything
I have a
else?
motion in regards to the College Board exam fees exceeding $50,000?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Carla Fahey made the motion, seconded by Cassandra Phillips. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We'll now move into information and discussion items. The first item is the budget review. The presenters are Dr. Mark Smith and Dr. Ed Bigby.
Thank you, Madam President. As Dr. Bigby makes his way, just want to get you oriented. You do have the budget presentation in front of you. So if you can follow along there, take notes, ask questions, et cetera. And then just to kind of reiterate the timing that we have, today's meeting is critical. We got some important information that we need you to kind of process, help guide your decision-making. When we get to June, we'll have a budget workshop. The session will be over at that time, obviously, so we'll be squared away on all the requirements and expectations and key bills that may impact funding. So in June, we'll be really ready for you to adopt the budget. So we want to kind of set things up for you to get an idea of what some of those key decision points are and what impact they're going to have on the overall budget. So Dr. Bigby's going to highlight that. We got it broken down in some slides ahead. But just want you to know, we don't have a lot of time before we need to adopt the budget. So we're trying to really give you what you need now. We really want you to be able to process, and we really want to be able to serve you and answer whatever questions you have so that you feel comfortable about the decisions that you're going to be making. So,
Good evening, Madam President, Board, Dr. Smith. I promise I'm a card-carrying member of the Vaccinated Club. So I can prove you if you need to. Dr. Smith and I decided, Dr. Fauci said it was okay for us to look this way.
yes,
Next
indeed.
slide. This is the budget timeline that's shortened up. Dr. Lotchka has made it a lot prettier than what it was before, so it's easier to digest. This is the meeting that we're discussing the process. Once again, as Dr. Smith said, the regular session ends on May 31st. We have a budget workshop scheduled on the 8th. We have to publish a legal notice in the paper that there will be a budget hearing. We won't have a tax rate hearing at that time. We'll probably not do that till September. And then we have to hold a public meeting, and we're going to have that tentatively scheduled for the night of the June board meeting to discuss the budget. And then a month after that, we actually receive the values that we build our budget on. So you see, we wait on the legislature and then we wait on values, so it's a best estimate budget. Okay, next slide. Just to recap where we are this year, we budgeted off 11,280 average daily attendance. We're sitting a little higher than 10,880 right now. The hold harmless, which is determined by the last 6 weeks, we're 3 weeks into that now. We had to have at least 34.1% of our students on campus. Right now, we're more than 10% ahead of that. So we're in really good shape that direction. So we should be able to be covered by the hold harmless. So we're only talking about losing about $3 million versus $5 million. Every bit helps. Okay, next slide. Some of the legislation, Dr. Smith's already talked to you a little bit. There is a conference committee for the Appropriations Bill. The House and Senate each nominate or appoint 5 members. The House appointed 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. The Senate, thanks to our Lieutenant Governor, put in 5 Republicans and no Democrats. So you can see that's skewed a little bit. But there are some good things that are in both bills, which they won't be debating. So they can't, if they're in both bills, they can't do anything to change those. And then once they come up with a bill, it'll have to go back to both houses for approval. Both of them say they'll fully fund House Bill 3, which means for the first time in a long time, they're not going to hurt us on funding. I don't know that they're going to help us any. Virtual school funding, Dr. Smith mentioned that. There's one little hang-up that's come up, and they're working through that now. A lot of the small rural schools wanted it to read that they could educate any student statewide. In other words, they could pick up some enrollment by doing that. The bills were initially written that you can educate your students that are enrolled in your district, and that's what we supported, and that's the way both of the pieces of legislation are written. So hopefully that'll work through that way. As Dr. Smith said, most of this will get finished on May the 30th before the session ends on the 31st, but they're still moving through. Okay, next slide. We talked about some budget scenarios and the possibility of giving a one-time payment next year. The first one, our projection and our demographer projected about 10,876 as an average daily attendance for next year, which would be an addition to 55 students to what we have this year. And you can see the total revenue is about $4.4 million less than what we budgeted off of this year. On the right, you can see the costs for if you gave a $800 stipend to every employee, 14, 18, or 2,200, you can see what those would cost with the stipend plus the benefits that are involved. So you can see if you went the 2,200 and this scenario is what played out, then we'd be about $9 million short next year of what we had budgeted this year. Of course, you paid the stipend out of fund balance, so it didn't come out of what we had budgeted. Okay, next slide. This is basically the same thing, except we're looking at a possibility of an increase of 2% of what we have this year, which we think is attainable. Hopefully with our 3-year-old pre-K and the registration of that's going pretty well, and we run a good chance of raising that number up. There is also some legislation out there that I failed to mention that would make pre-K 3 and 4 free for any student. Hopefully that'll pass. Anyway, with this one, we'd be about $3.2 million less revenue next year than we had this year, and those numbers on the right stay the same. So you can see if you combine those, that's about a $7.5 million difference. Okay, the next slide. If you want to be very optimistic, then we would increase our ADA by 4%. I wouldn't bet the mortgage on this, but anything's possible. Hopefully it is. And you can see it would be about $1.7 million less revenue next year than we budgeted this year. And you can see the 4 scenarios that we've outlined for you, those costs, and where would it be revenue-wise if you choose to do one of those and pay it out of the general fund. Okay, next slide, please. This is a little bitty, but thought I'd give you a comparison of fund balance again with these projections. Once again, the audited fund balance was $67.7 million at the end of last year. The supplement that you provided this year, technology purchases, this is less what we're supposed to receive from the state that we haven't received yet. And PPE orders of 855, so that's about $5.1 million that you've authorized us to spend out of fund balance this year. Other impacts that we have, the Teaching Learning Center, we've completed part of that, but there's still about $6 million to be paid on that. And then we're talking about the $3 million revenue loss from this year. That's close to $9 million. So if all of these fell into place, you'd have about $54 million fund balance at the end of this year. I expect it'll be a little higher than that. You can see what happened to it if you wanted to pay everything, the different scenarios out of fund balance, the 800, 1,400, 1,800, or 2,200, what we're projecting the fund balance would be after those payments took place. Okay, next slide. Last meeting, you gave us some priorities of what you'd like to see in the 21-22 budget. We're really appreciative of that. We've actually gone back and, as a group, discussed things that we had done currently to get us toward those goals. We're certainly not there, but things that we've done, so we're going to quickly cover those. Next slide, please. Teacher compensation. For the last 6 years, you've either approved a salary increase or one-time payments, and every time the insurance costs have gone up, you've allowed us to cover the difference in employees. Bilingual ESL, expanded recruitment efforts are taking place. We're still not where we need to be with those, but hopefully we'll, between the Grow Your Own and more recruitment, that'll come up. Social workers and social emotional learning. We've added 8 SEO counselors, 2 social workers, and this year we added a district employee assistance program. That's our employees and their families can access counseling services outside of the school district with no charge. Okay, next slide. Student learning needs, we've put in permanent subs this year at most of the campuses, and then you bought about $3 million worth of technology. Once again, we've applied to have that back to us from one of the federal grants. Every other day, I get an email from them chiseling down what they were going to send us. I think I told you last year, they've now approved paying for computers, but they wouldn't approve the sleeves to put them in to give them to students or a mechanism to charge them. So they're kind of a boat anchor if you can't charge them. But we'll take anything they'll give us right now. HVAC air quality, there's a long list of projects that have been completed and repairs. Mr. Paterka was up here last year explaining to you how we're band-aiding a lot of those and trying to just make them work without putting a whole lot of money into those. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's already been mentioned, the Courageous Conversations About Race book study this year. The African-American course is there, and the Mexican-American course is being added for next year. They're both TEA-approved courses. Okay, next slide. Student recruitment, you actually approved some more of this, some marketing. We've added attendance clerks and a PEIM specialist to make sure that our attendance is correct and how our students are coded. We have a parent enrollment center now, and the truancy office is making a tremendous number of calls. ROTC, and you're going to hear a presentation on that after with this, but there's been one to you, and exploration has been started on that. And then the choice programs, in addition to what we already had, they're adding the Active Leadership Academy and expanding pre-K to three-year-old, full-day three-year-old next year. Okay, next slide. ESSER, which is the Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. It's amazing how we have abbreviations for everything. This is phase 3. Phase 1 was a washout. They gave us our money, basically. So it was a supplanting grant. It wasn't a supplementing one. ESSER 2 is still floating around out there somewhere. It hasn't been brought forward. This is ESSER 3, and it will be supplemental. And there's a lot of hoops, but there's also a lot of opportunity for our district because of these. The next 2 slides contain all the areas that they'll allow us to spend the money, and I'm not going to read those to you, but I wanted to make sure you had those in your possession so you can see that there's quite a bit of things that we can spend the funds on. They've actually allocated 2/3 of our grant to be planned with now, which is a little over $16 million. And then the other third will come when the state of Texas gets their plan approved by the Department of Education, and that'll be another $8 million. So it's a little over $25 million. It started out a little higher than that, but it's whittled down just a bit from that. But it's a great opportunity for us to try to bridge this learning gap that's been created over the pandemic for sure, and whatever we had in the past. We want to bring that forward and surpass where we were, and that's going to take a lot of work. We're planning just in the infancy stages of it right now. It requires a plan, a detailed plan that involves community input, organizational input, student input, as well as yours. And it also entails a plan for opening school for all classroom instruction for next year. So we're working on those. The grant has to be turned in by July 27th, but they'll actually cover costs that began March 13th of 2020. So we can go back and try to pick up some of those costs that we had and get reimbursed for those. But it's quite an undertaking, and we've started having Friday meetings now to start the discussion process of where our biggest needs are. And hopefully that'll move forward quickly and I'll get through with it. I'm still dealing with one that we filed in November that we haven't gotten finished yet. So it's enough to make a person want to go back home and watch TV. Now, the second slide is the rest of that list. And I think probably the top one here is what we're all targeting for is how do we go back and address the learning loss for students. There's some other things in here that can really help our district, but we have to keep our main focus on how do we bring those kids back to where they need to be. Okay, next slide. Once again, I talked about the different grants. So far, supplanting, which means we spent our money and they gave it back to us. We've got about $2.6 million estimated supplemental, which means it was extra money, is 2.6. That's chiseled down a little bit as they keep reducing the one, but that is additional funds. ESSER 2, we've got over almost $12 million allocation from the federal government, but so far the state hasn't taken any action on how they want to disperse that, if it's going to be supplemental or supplanting. ESSER 3, you can see the amounts there that we have, and those are supplemental, so we'll be able to use those on top of what funds we already have, so we don't have to replace some of our funding with that. So we can continue to fund with our funds, and then this is all on top of that. So it's a golden opportunity I've never seen in the 300 or 400 years I've been doing this. That they always say, well, you just want us to throw money at you. Well, they didn't, but the federal government did, and they did allow it this time. So I'm excited about the fact that we can do some things we've always wanted to do with students that we just couldn't do out of our regular budget. So it's an exciting time. It's sad that we have to do all that catching up, but at least we have a mechanism now to do that with, and we don't have to try to figure out how to do that out of our general budget. Okay, I believe that's, next slide. That's the end of what we have for you tonight. Be happy to try to answer any questions, any input that you'd like to give us. Once again, we'll have a little better handle at the workshop. We won't know exactly, but you never know exactly in school budgets, since we don't actually know exactly what we're going to have till the end of the next year. So we're budgeting to do things. We don't know what we're going to do with how much we're going to have to do with it, but we'll have the best estimate that we can for you at the workshop so that we can do any tweaking or changing to that you might want to do before the 21st of June.
Any questions, comments?
I have a comment. I'm just impressed. I just thank you for your diligence in delivering this information. I'm just in awe of all the information that you've done for us and categorically placing it where it needs to be for us to understand. And so I just appreciate you
Well, thank you. I have a lot of help.
and your team.
Madam President, may I just add something for
Yes,
the
please.
board to think about? Can you, Dustin back there, can you go to the fund balance slide? And board members, can you turn to that fund balance slide on your hard copy while he gets there?
Keep going. Yeah.
There you
Stop.
go.
Thank
There you go. All right, and then the bottom section of that where it talks about the things that you all are considering associated with staff for next year and what we may want to do. Dr. Bigby, if you could just kind of highlight, just so the board can have some perspective here, you know, TEA, there is no legal amount that is required to have in a fund balance. But obviously for a school district, you want that to be as healthy a number as possible. And so right now, you know, we're obviously in a very, very good shape and, you know, well over a little bit over 4 months of operating procedure funding that we have available to us. And so the TEA uses that baseline recommendation of 3 months of operating funds. So I wanted you to get a picture in your mind of what that could look like as you break down those different amounts at the bottom there. So Dr. Bigby, let's just say, for example, if the board decided to give a $2,200 one-time stipend to all employees, which would have that $45+ million end result of the fund balance. Elaborate on what that would mean in terms of where we would stand.
Okay, our monthly cash flow's about $10.3 million. So what that really means is, since our fiscal year ends where it does, we need $30 million minimum in fund balance just to pay the bills until we start receiving some state funding the next year. So 30 would be the rock bottom that would need. The 45 or 46 from a money manager, to me, is about as far as we want to go down. It's more than 3 months, but it's less than 5 months. And with the way things happen, you're only looking at about a $16 million cushion over our cash flow. And you know what happened to one of our neighbors when their cash flow situation got bad last year. We don't want to ever get into that situation. So to me, we probably should pull 30 or 31 millions off of the bottom of them, just say we need that for cash flow, and the rest of it is considered fund balance. So going from 67 to 45 in a 1 year span is a pretty good jump. And I know personally, if you have a savings account and you start taking money out of it, it's easier to keep taking money out of it. And my advice, and take it for what it costs you, is don't get it much lower than this, or we run the potential of running ourselves into a bind somewhere down the road. And Lord knows what's going to happen to us 2 or 3 years down the road. It's not probably going to be anything that we want to write home about. But that's my thought on fund balance. Mine and TA's don't jive, mainly because they talk about a fiscal year that ends the end of August. If ours did, then we wouldn't have to have quite that much cash flow, because TA starts bringing in the next year's money in September. But we have to go from the end of this school year in typically the end of May until September before we see that money. That's why you need a bigger cushion just for cash flow.
Thank you, Madam President. That's a very important piece, and I wanted to highlight that for you all so you can be thinking about it, maybe asking more questions as you begin the process, and work our way toward making your final decision.
Thank you. Oh, yes, Carla?
And this does not include any increase in insurance cost, the insurance, it would be an additional amount?
No, we're building those into the
Okay,
budget.
it's
It's
inclusive.
part of that, what we look at is
Okay.
having less money to deal with, because we know they're going up.
Okay,
No, you mean talking about employees? No, we don't have the new rates yet.
okay,
They're waiting on the legislature to see if there's going to be some funds put in from the legislature to keep those rates down. So when we do, we'll bring it back to you, and we'll be asking you to approve that amount, whatever it is. It's varied from $11 to $19 a month since I've been here, but we'll bring that back to you when we know it.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? We will move to information discussion agenda item B, board update on Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, Junior ROTC. The presenter is Dr. Sewell.
Thank you, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Smith. Just wanted to provide you all a brief update so the board will know the next planning phases that are in place for establishing a JROTC program at Duncanville High School. In October, we presented the initial steps needed to phase in a JROTC program. Now that our facilities have reopened for inspection and we have researched more details and we've spent some time surveying our community, we have some progress updates to share with you this evening. The leadership benefits of JROTC. Thank you. The leadership benefits of JROTC will bring additional opportunities for our students in Duncanville ISD. Several nearby districts offer the Army JROTC program, providing opportunities for us for collaboration and partnerships in this general area in this region. Some partner possibilities would be districts as Grand Prairie, Lancaster, DeSoto, and Dallas. So it's exciting for our teams to come together and strategically design this for our scholars. Next slide. So for our next step, the facility requirements are a critical aspect of the JROTC program, and those facility requirements must meet specifications as outlined by the U.S. Army Cadet Command Headquarters. Once we work with our local Army representatives, the Military Cadet Command will send their leaders to inspect and to approve our facilities. They'll certify that we meet all the established design elements and the safety standards for us to operate a program. Afterwards, the next steps that we will put into place will be to recruit our instructors, of course with the help of our Army consultants, and then to apply for program approval. So the next piece to explain here about program approval, the Army JROTC operates under rules set out by Congress, and their guidelines are under congressionally mandated funding. So currently, the U.S. Congress, which is what we've discovered in our research, has filled all of the federally funded JROTC programs. So we will seek to be added to the wait list to gain and to secure congressional funding in the future. In the meantime, current day, applications will be accepted for JROTC to operate under the National Defense Cadet Corps, which allows for a JROTC program to operate while our district awaits further congressional approval for federal funding. The NDCC program is virtually identical to JROTC program, except it's fully funded by our school district, not Congress. Applications for the NDCC programs will generally be approved pending facilities inspection and permits to operate. Duncanville High School would be notified in writing regarding the date that the school may establish a JROTC program under the NDCC application. Schools hosting the NDCC unit will operate as a JROTC program. They will follow statutory and regulatory guidance under JROTC. Specifically, these units must employ a minimum of 2 Army certified instructors. Next slide. So here we have a timeline. You'll see the next steps for this spring, for next year, and for the inaugural year of 22-23 for our rising freshmen to participate in an official JROTC program. That's only 1 school year away. Steps include establishing interest with rising 8th graders, beginning our military leadership clubs at our middle schools, approval of a location at Duncanville High School, meeting Army inspection requirements and that approval, and then our application, purchasing and receiving specific equipment that is required for us to have an armory and facility and classroom, and then also registration of the rising freshman class as they matriculate up, from their 8th grade cohort. Next slide. So the facilities are detailed and listed here. Of particular note is the requirement for a student learning center to be readily accessible to a large outdoor area for marching, formation, or other JROTC activities. The estimated cost for the next year's startup funds are listed, and again, please note these are predicted amounts and estimated amounts only. Additional costs could be incurred depending upon what the Army requires and what they present to us under their facility inspection. Annual estimated costs will cover the second list on our chart with 2 instructor salaries, and then possibly adding more instructors and a little more cost if we grow the program. With maximum program growth, the maximum number of facilitators would be 5 positions. Next slide. So here are the results from our interest survey. We just surveyed our group this spring, and we have a little more over 270 responses. You can see that the results have given us an overall positive feedback from our community. You can see the breakdown of responses in the top circle graph that have the red and pink percentages. We had about 39% of employees that responded, 5% from the community, 10% were students, and about 44% were parents. The next yellow chart shows that most people surveyed were familiar or very familiar with JROTC. You can kind of see those yellow blocks that explain that. And then the last two categories verify our stakeholders find this program as an idea that's valuable for students. You've got the red circle graph and then the red chart. And so they do find value for this for our scholars as we go forward with planning. So we want to give this information to you all, just so you kind of know what data is out there and what our community respondents have stated. Okay, next slide. And so finally, we have a recruitment flyer, as you can see here. Our teams will be recruiting students for clubs at the middle school level. Here you can see this flyer is, for sponsors. It really outlines, how we're recruiting sponsors for the middle school, what their responsibilities would be, and advertising to gain interest for club sponsors to develop these at our middle schools. So the goal is to recruit students for our military clubs in middle school. And then we anticipate those students, particularly the 8th graders, to be our rising freshman cohort in the upcoming year, 22-23. So thank you so much for your attention, and I'd be happy to take any comments or questions at this time.
Yes, LaSonia has one.
I see on your budget and facilities requirement slide, very specific requirements for the room. And so I appreciated that because I was trying to picture, well, would you do this in a gym? So have we identified a couple of options of where we would house JROTC?
Not at this time. We are going to rely on the Army cadet assigned facility auditors. We're going to go through that process and have them audit the facilities and look at what would best meet those requirements. But right now, we don't have any information. That's going to be in our upcoming next steps.
Because I'm wondering what we know as a district, or what we can find out that even has 3,300 square feet, just as being the district before the Army comes in. If we have like only 2 to 5 places that even meet that requirement, and because I'd like a visual of our options so that when it comes to time to vote for them, I'd like to know what we're working with. So I was just wondering if we have already identified places that meet the 3,300 square feet.
We have not. We're presenting that to you right now as our update, what we've researched and what we know we've got to do next. So we have not.
Okay.
But we will.
Yeah, I was looking for Mr. Paterka back there, but he's already left. He is the master of our capacity, and he would have been able to speak to what our capacity is. But anyway, he left. We'll get those numbers.
Yes, and again, we're just now exploring this and going forward for them, and so those steps will be forthcoming.
Yeah, I know we're early. I was just I would like to see what our options are. If there's a way, I don't know if the board would like a little tour, if whatever the options are, so I could just get a visual of what what we're looking at.
Absolutely. We'll bring those back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other, yes, Janet?
So could you clarify the salary? So if we're going to have these counselors or these JROTC instructors on our campuses, we are going to supply the salaries from our budget?
Yes, so when we presented in October, the colonel that had presented had put that budget together. So that's part of that planning process that we will incrementally plan for and bring those estimates to you all for approval.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Carla?
Thank you, Dr. Sewell, for this update. In regards to the $1,500 stipend for the middle school teachers,
Yes, ma'am.
is that per volunteering to do it, or is it an annual stipend? I mean, will they be doing it each year, or just this first inaugural, let's sign people up?
I'm going to speak and say that would be a good question for Ms. Shalante Payne. So I don't want to misspeak and say incorrectly if it's annual or not. Okay. So Ms. Payne, are you here? Okay.
Good evening, Board, Dr. Smith.
Yes, ma'am. What we're looking for is that to be a club that has been established at the middle schools yearly for our recruiting purpose and to initiate the citizenship and the learning model at the middle school level. So it will be inclusive. Yearly, we do a stipend in the career and technical program, and so that will become a part of that stipend because this JROTC will then be able to assist with this career and technical program.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome. Any other questions, comments? All right, we'll move on to the information discussion. Agenda item C, strategic plan and portrait of a graduate from 2021 through 2026. The presenter is Dr. Karen Hvac.
Good evening again, Madam President, trustees, and Dr. Smith. I'm excited to share with you this evening the revised district long-range strategic plan for the years 2021 through 2026. You should have a document at your space this evening, so note that so you can follow along. As you will recall from our January strategic planning work with the board, strategic planning is a process. I'm going to have you change the slide. I'm sorry. There we go. Strategic planning is a process that dynamic organizations like Duncanville ISD engage in as a means for continuous improvement, alignment, and to ensure effective and efficient operations. Strategic planning is not a process that takes place quickly. It is a multi-stage process that involves a diverse group of stakeholders working in collaboration. In the packet you received this evening, you have been provided an executive summary of the planning process along with the timeline for development. Beginning on page 5, you will see the committee members that were invited to be part of the planning process. As you can see, we had representatives from the classroom to the community, and I would just like to take a moment to say thank you to each one of these participants. We could not have done this work without their commitment to the district and their passion to ensure the success of the students in Duncanville ISD. The design teams and action teams played an important role in the development of the various layers of the strategic plan. And in accordance with AE Legal, you, as the board, also serve in the capacity in which you were asked to govern through the adoption of the mission, the vision, the values, and the goals. Your adoption of these components laid the foundation for our work. Dr. Smith, as the superintendent, also has a critical role in the planning process through his recommendation to you, the board, and by ensuring that the plan is effectively deployed, executed, monitored, and adjusted as needed for continuous improvement and the achievement of your vision and goals. On page 8 and 9 in your packet, you'll see the core components and strategic goals you adopted in January. Just as a reminder, your mission is to engage, equip, and empower all scholars to achieve their unique potential. And your vision is for Duncanville ISD to be the school district where dreams are inspired and excellence is achieved. These core statements and goals will be placed throughout the district for all to see on the strategic plan on a page. This is on page 10 of your packet. The plan on a page is intended to serve as a quick reference and ongoing reminder of the direction in which we're moving as a district. It is to encourage continuous improvement and create clarity in our work. On page 11, you'll see our portrait of a graduate as well. This work was done by another stakeholder committee and is a key component of the overall comprehensive strategic plan. It takes a district beyond a vision for the organization and adds a vision for its students. A portrait of a graduate is a picture of the characteristics we expect in our students as we prepare them for post-graduation success. I'd like to extend a special thank you to Mrs. Shalante Payne and Dr. Nanika Bernard under the direction of Dr. Kathy Sewell for their facilitation of the Portrait of a Graduate process. With our vision and direction clearly articulated, our next phase in the process was to create action plans that would take us from vision to action. We had action teams work on each of the 5 priority areas over the past couple of months. These action teams created 72 action steps that are believed to ensure each goal is met over the next 3 to 5 years. The action plans begin on page 12 of your document and are separated by their priority area. Of course, strategic plans are only as effective as they are implemented. Therefore, Dr. Smith collaboratively worked with senior leaders to develop a comprehensive deployment plan and monitoring plan. The deployment plan is intended to create buy-in, understanding, and awareness about the direction of our district. The monitoring plan is a cycle of continuous evaluation to ensure the plan is an integral part of our work. The deployment plan and monitoring plan are on the last 2 pages of your packet this evening. You will notice we will provide the board with a progress report 3 times annually so that you're aware of the plan actions, progress, and adjustments. At the conclusion of our action team planning, we asked members to share how they would be ambassadors for this work. It's obvious by these 3 select statements that our teams were very proud of the work they accomplished and are excited to share their plan with colleagues, classmates, and neighbors. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity this evening to share our comprehensive strategic plan and for being part of this work through your approval of the core statements and goals and through your engagement on our strategic action teams. Your leadership has been invaluable. So therefore, this concludes my presentation of our strategic plan, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Yes, Carla.
Thank you, Dr. Hvac. Did you say that committee member names were on page 5?
They started on that page. Let me check the page numbers, make sure I get them right. Yes, they start on page 5. Actually, they start on page 4.
Okay,
4,
okay.
5, and 6.
My bad, I was looking at the one in the book.
Oh, okay, 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We will move to the information discussion agenda item D, COVID-19 pandemic plan and efforts update. Again, Dr. Hvac.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to share with you again this month our efforts in mitigating the effects and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight, we will share data regarding our enrollment, the method of instruction our students have selected, our current COVID cases, and how we are proactively preparing for the PPE needs of our campuses for next year. When we look at our current enrollment and attendance as of today, there has been consistency throughout the year in our numbers. There has also been consistency in the challenges with student attendance and engagement. We have seen some improvements this grading period due to the efforts made by our campuses and our district through home visits, incentive programs, phone calls, and marketing campaigns. One particular marketing campaign has been our Show Up and Shine on Star campaign. You may have seen some of our staff members wearing bright yellow shirts with this slogan on it. Since the state requires all students to take the STAR in person, we knew we had to be strategic in order to get students back on campus for testing. Therefore, we created this campaign to encourage on-campus attendance, and I'm pleased to say it worked. For our April testing, we had a 92% participation rate in elementary, an 87% in middle, and an 88% in high school. We consider this to be a tremendous achievement and are seeing similar results in some cases, some even higher numbers in our May testing. In addition to monitoring our attendance and enrollment numbers, we are also continually looking at the method of instruction in which our students have selected, since we know that when students are in person, we are better able to address the learning loss of that student. As you can see here, we do have a majority of our students that are learning in person at this time. In addition to our Show Up and Shine campaign that was previously mentioned, we are also intentionally marketing our district and encouraging students to enroll for next year. You may have seen some of our billboards or received a door hanger at your home promoting our pre-K programs. We have done a number of things to encourage pre-K enrollment, but beyond marketing, we have also increased our options with the adding of the 3-year-old program, as well as tuition-free pre-K to our employees. As a result, our applications for pre-K are already 36% higher than this time last year. And as of today, we're already at 25% of our projected enrollment, which is great news. Clearly, our efforts are working. Our enrollment center at the Duncanville ISD Police Station, where we assist parents with enrollment, has been booked with appointments for the past several weeks, and our efforts to simplify the process and increase communication has resulted in positive feedback from our parents. Although the pandemic impacted our enrollment this current school year, our hope is to mitigate the impact of COVID has had on student enrollment and engagement through our marketing efforts, and to see all students to return next year, in addition to many more new students. One thing that I believe has helped our enrollment is our effort to ensure our campuses are safe. We have continued to see fewer and fewer student COVID cases over the past several weeks. Campuses continue to be diligent with their safety processes, and we've actually had several days at a time without any COVID cases or symptoms reported. This is obviously very good news. I will now turn it over to Ms. Kathleen Brown to discuss the staff COVID numbers.
Good evening. In addition to our normal pressures of life, we've all seen how COVID-19 has impacted our staff. And despite everything that has gone on, teaching in person and virtually, our staff members have been committed to implementing the safety protocols. And so over the past few weeks, we've seen times when we've had no cases, and we know that that is the work of our team, the work and commitment of our staff, and us continuing to implement those safety protocols. Districts where that's not happening, they've seen more numbers than we've seen here in our district, and so we're very proud of that. For the remainder of the year, it is our plan to continue with that. In the next 48 hours, our dashboard will show 0, and it hasn't shown 0 for quite some time, so we are waiting to celebrate. So on Thursday, check out our dashboard. We'll hopefully be at 0. As a reminder to you, our dashboard shows current active cases. So that doesn't mean that someone has tested positive recently. That means that they are still out and in quarantine for that 14-day period. And so that's how we will get to the number 0. As our staff have continued to have some level of concern about COVID, we are continuing to remind them that this has never happened before, that they are doing something that has never been done, that is teaching or working in an environment in the midst of a pandemic. And that does not go unnoticed, and just speaks to the determination of our staff. So even with the several weeks where we've seen no new cases. As I said before, we're going to continue to stay the course and to finish strong. You can see on the slide that it shows that an estimated 75% of our employees are fully vaccinated. So thank you, and I will turn it back over to Dr. Hvac.
And continuing with our update on our personal protective equipment, Board, first of all, we want to thank you for what you've done for our staff and students in regard to helping to ensure their safety and well-being and mitigating COVID-19 by providing the funding for our personal protective equipment, our PPE. Our current supply, we're in good shape at this particular time. We're ready for the end of school. We have plenty of current supply. We're ready for summer school. And of course, at the end of the slide, I have what our total cost will be. Right now, we are getting quotes for all the things that we want to purchase for next school year. But right now, our face coverings and our masks, we still have many in stock, and we will reorder those. And then next, our hand sanitizer. Of course, we've had, you see the picture of the big gallon. We've had the small bottles. We've had the snaps. We have those in stock along with the wipes, the gloves, and we plan to reorder for next year. Our handheld misters and our e-mist machines, you know, the handhelds that every staff member received, we still have some in supply, but we possibly will reorder some of those next year depending on the needs that we have, along with our e-mist machines, and those are handled by our maintenance department. Those are the ones, the large backpack ones that we shared with you. So we're in good shape with the e-mist machines right now. Mr. Paterka has shared he won't need to order. He has some extras, but the chemicals that go in supply in both of those, we will be reordering, along with our touchless hand sanitizers. Of course, they're all over our buildings. They're on our buses. We'll be reordering refills and any other needs that we have. We have already begun surveying our staff members about needs for next year. Things like plexiglass, the foldable shields, desk shields, and those kinds of things. We still have those. They'll still be in place. So we won't have to reorder those unless something happens to one of the plexiglass stations or the desk shields. And so what I thought you would like to see this factoid that since last March to today, we have spent a little over really right at $1.1 million on personal protective equipment, and the cost for next year is to be determined. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Hvac.
Thank you, Ms. Fields and Ms. Brown. This concludes our COVID-19 pandemic plan update for this month. It is always a privilege to share our efforts that we are making to ensure our schools are safe for students and staff, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Thank you very much. Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
We do not have any requests to speak to the board tonight. One thing I want to mention before we adjourn is I'd like to thank Cassandra Phillips for serving for 2 years during an unprecedented time as president. So it hasn't been easy, but she's sailed through it very, very well.
If I can say something, thank you all so much. I appreciate the opportunity, but I want to say it's easy to do when you have a great team beside you. So thank you all.
And Madam President, just want to echo, as all of you know, it's not easy to lead and to, pull everyone in the same direction, especially this past year with the pandemic and the uncertainty and all the moving parts. And so I do want to echo your sentiments. Ms. Cassandra Phillips, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for stepping in a really tough time and providing very necessary leadership for me and this board. Thank you for being responsive. Thank you for listening. And thank you for really being very attentive and in tune to how we needed to organize ourselves and do our business as a board. I don't take it for granted. We don't take it for granted. So again, thank you very much.
The meeting is adjourned.